The 2024 NFL Draft begins tonight in Detroit, Michigan, the Motor City, hosting the biggest annual offseason event for the NFL. What are the chances that we hear Kingsley Suamataia's name called tonight? We'll talk about that. We're also catching up with Jakob Robinson on today's show.
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? I'm Jake Hatch, your host here on Locked On Cougars, your resident BYU insider. Thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Appreciate all of you for being everydayers with us right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. The motto is your team every day, and as such, this is your original daily podcast focused on all things BYU. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Right now, you can get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed with our friends at FanDuel. It's $150 win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com/locked on to get started today. All right, the NFL Draft is here. Months long lead up to this event this year, taking place in Detroit, Michigan. Looking forward to it. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of attention cast upon quarterbacks and the like, but there is a position group that is absolutely dominating a lot of the headlines, but may not be necessarily the one you're thinking of, and that is the offensive tackle class in this year's NFL Draft. Now, most of you have probably seen the movie The Blind Side, or have heard people say the second highest paid player traditionally on NFL teams is the left tackle, the blindside protector of a quarterback. And that traditionally has been the case. Now, we've seen other position groups like wide receiver really jump up in terms of average salary because their impact on games is innumerable. I think tight ends are kind of going the same way, but they still aren't making necessarily across the board as much as offensive tackles are. This year's offensive tackle class in the NFL Draft is extremely deep. I've talked with enough people / read enough mock drafts and analysis of the draft to understand that the offensive tackle class in this year might be the deepest it's been in quite some time. That's going to lead a lot of teams to think, okay, if we can upgrade our offensive line, in particular, one of the tackle spots, whether that's left or right tackle, and get better with a draft pick there, that saves us some money because rookie scale contracts are going to obviously be less than what a veteran's going to make on a high level type deal. And also, it gives you a chance to build in other places of your roster while that player plays out that rookie deal, and then you reward them with a mammoth contract extension if they prove worthy of that. So what is all this? What am I saying all this for when it comes to Kingsley Suamataia? Now, tonight is the first round. Tomorrow night will be the second and third rounds, and I am still expecting Kingsley Suamataia's name to come up tomorrow night because most of the projections have him somewhere between the 30 and 40 mark of the draft picks. But if there is as big of a run on offensive tackles as there are rumors to be in tonight's draft, that is great news for Kingsley Suamataia. Might a team that likes him, but maybe not necessarily is in love with him, that's late in that first round or is early on in the second round and fears that a team could jump up and snag him, could they trade into the back end of the first round and try and snag him to secure the guy that they want at that position? It's a good position to be in if you're Kingsley Suamataia right now, because even if he's a second-round draft pick, he is still being drafted with the whole thought process he's going to be a starter in the near-term future for that NFL franchise, if not a day-one starter. That's still the good news, being a second-round pick. The only benefit to being a first-round pick is the fact that you have the fifth-year option. That's where I was getting the fifth and the first screwed up. It has a fifth-year option on that deal instead of having a 4-year deal. You get as many as 5 years, and obviously the first round deals and the first round money is much higher than the second round or any other round in the NFL. Kingsley has been a guy that is in any other draft, it feels like in the last 2 to 3 to 4 years, probably is a surefire first-round pick. It just so happens that there are a number of other guys at the same position he plays, offensive tackle, who teams A, like better, B, have better measurables, or C, just flat out teams prefer that type of a player to what Kingsley is. Kingsley is a very, very talented prospect, but he is a little bit unrefined. And what I mean by that is he's only really played 2 years of college football. He was a redshirt sophomore at BYU with 2 years of experience. There are other guys in this offensive tackle class who've got 3 and 4 years of experience that NFL teams are going to look at and say, I want the safer bet at that position. I'm going to take that guy over a guy like Kingsley Suamataia. I've said it once, I'll say it again, that the NFL and the all pro sports are drafting on potential, and that is what Kingsley has in spades, is a load of potential. Yes, he is not the ideal height for an offensive tackle. They measured him at 6'4" and change. Would you like him to be 6'5" or 6'6"? Yes, and there will be teams that actually will cross him off their list because he is not adequate height for an offensive tackle. He's got these long arms, though. He's got NFL tackle length arms. I know that sounds really weird, but wingspan is of critical importance when it comes to NFL offensive line play. He's got the wingspan that is absolutely necessary to play offensive tackle. So it's kind of this give and take of where teams are going to look at Kingsley and say, okay, we can deal with the fact maybe he's not necessarily as tall as we want him to be, but we can obviously mold him into what we hope he can be with some training. And obviously there's a chance that early on in his career, due to his height and maybe a team already having two bookend tackles that they're letting play out their contracts, Kingsley could kick inside to either guard spot, really kind of learn the tricks of the trade, be a contributor on that offensive line. And then when the team deems him ready to jump back out to offensive tackle, he makes that transition back to the exterior. There have been a lot of people who have compared him to Penei Sewell, who is his cousin, who obviously helps train him a little bit. Penei is one of the premier tackles in the NFL, even though he plays right tackle. He is an absolute force out there for the Detroit Lions. I think Kingsley's being looked at more in that mold where he is not necessarily the most refined pass blocking offensive tackle. There's plenty of potential on that end, but he's a ready and willing offensive run blocker when it comes to getting downfield and really just going after guys. And that's what I think teams are going to look at and say, okay, do we see Kingsley more as a right tackle? And if the consensus is he's more of a right tackle, that probably firmly puts him in that second round mix. But like I said, if there is any big run on offensive tackles, and reading up on this, some of the foremost draft nicks, as I like to call them, or a lot of them like to call themselves that, those draft analysts that are up there, they're saying that offensive tackle is a position of absolute importance, of need. It's one that teams are willing to trade up in this draft to get certain guys, and all of that screams to me more and more money for Kingsley Suamataia, because he's going to benefit from potentially being, he's probably the 7th or 8th tackle in this class. And if there's as big of a run as some people claim there could be on offensive tackles, that could find him with a team saying, okay, we need to go get Kingsley now. They trade into the back end of the first round and snag him there, or we'll see him early on tomorrow night in the second round, because I don't think he gets past the middle part of the second round. I think he is that good of a prospect. He's that highly thought of, and I'm wishing him and his family nothing but the best, because this is a really life-changing moment when it comes to the NFL. So congratulations are in order to Kingsley, and I got my fingers crossed that he gets a chance to hear his name called tonight in the first round, because there's no bigger honor than being a team's first overall selection in a draft. Now, if a team trades back into the first round, maybe their second selection, but you're still a first-round pick, and that's something that nobody can take away from you when it happens. So what are the chances it happens? I'm saying it's 50-50 at best, but the good news is offensive tackles are in demand this year. And what does Kingsley play? Offensive tackle. And I think he's got all the potential to be a very, very solid starter, if not a Pro Bowl type player down the line in the National Football League. All right, coming up here in just a minute, we're going to flip over and talk a little about the portal situation for BYU basketball, BYU football. What have I heard? What have I learned this week as we're talking about that? We'll roll on. We'll talk about that next right here on Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Monopoly Go. Now, I've been told I'm a fairly competitive person, and that comes from none other than my wife, who, by the way, my wife, super competitive as well. She's a former D1 athlete. What do you think? The best part is you can have some fun with your competitive edge, and you can do that with our friends over at Monopoly Go. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's been downloaded over 150 million times. It's a great twist on the classic Monopoly game, where you play on not one, but hundreds of Monopoly boards in crazy locations, building up amazing cities that bring you big money. But the best part is you can have fun with your friends and also your enemies on this game as well. You can charge them rent on their iconic properties, just like the classic Monopoly game. But now you can also heist their vaults for riches and still essentially the money for yourself. And the leaderboards show you who the biggest Monopoly tycoon is, so you know who to target in that circumstance. Not just your competitive side that loves it. You also can team up with your friends and people all around the world in time tournaments to earn huge rewards and have fun along the way. So get in the game and join your friends today. That's Monopoly Go, now free on the Apple Store or Google Play. Once again, Monopoly Go on the Apple Store or Google Play. Today's show is also brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Now, no matter what you're looking to go to this summer, whether it's MLB games, which, by the way, Game Time is now an official authorized ticket marketplace in Major League Baseball. But if you're also going into concerts, theater events, other sporting events, comedy shows, whatever you're into, Game Time has got the options for you guys. You can go online, check out whatever matchup you're having to be going to. A lot of you will be traveling this summer to places that have MLB baseball, whether you're in Southern California or on the East Coast, wherever it might be. Check in on the tickets you might be interested in. The best part about this with killer last minute deals, all of the prices on Game Time actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. Think about that. The longer you wait, the better deal you get when it comes to going to the MLB game. You can do it with our friends over at Game Time. The killer last minute deals, once again, all in prices, views from your seat, and the lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying your MLB tickets or really any other tickets out there you happen to be interested in. The best part is that the lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference if you find better tickets prices elsewhere. And the best part is you get all-in prices. You toggle that feature so the total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout, and you're on your way to the game. So take the guesswork once again out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app today, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off your purchase. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Appreciate all of you for being everydayers with us here on the podcast. Want to remind you guys, if you've not checked it out already, check out the Locked On Sports Today live 24/7 streaming channel. Are you sick of watching any of the other sports networks out there and having to turn on the volume with all the shouting going on from the talking heads on those networks? Check out Locked On Sports Today. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day with the latest stories as well as the biggest opinions. The best part is none of the screaming that seems to be going on the other networks. So check it out today. It's all available 24/7 on Amazon Fire TV channels app and also free on YouTube. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, let's talk a little bit about what's going on in the portal for BYU. Now, I can just say this on the basketball front. There are all kinds of rumors out there. I don't even know where to begin, honestly, with all the names that have been lobbed at me / have been written about. I'm not going to try and steal anybody's thunder. I know that Coug Connect reportedly has mentioned a number of names out there when it comes to guys that BYU's chasing, but the names I know of right now are Andre Stojakovic in the transfer portal, and then in terms of the recruiting sphere, JJ Mandequit out of Utah Prep basketball, formerly the RSL Basketball Academy. He is a top 50 prospect that BYU's working hard to land in this upcoming recruiting cycle. What I can say, and I talked a little bit about it yesterday about Kevin Young, is that Kevin Young has got a number of connections, and he's got connections at every level of basketball. Remember, he started his career as a unpaid assistant coach at what is now UVU, then was Utah Valley State College. Then he jumped into the G League, rose as high as a head coach in the G League, really was a player development guy for many, many years before getting his first crack with the Philadelphia 76ers as an assistant coach, a player development coach at that. He has worked with a number of players, both at the high school, I'm sure the junior college, as well as the college level, high major level, that have come into the NBA, and he has got connections to these players. And in turn, those players who may now be NBA veterans have got connections to other players when it comes to the recruiting sphere. The nice part is that Kevin Young has got a branded name in the world of basketball, and that's going to benefit BYU. There are going to be young men out there, and I think that a guy like JJ Mandequit might be part of that group that are going to say, okay, what does this guy really know? When they talk to people about Kevin Young, and they're like, hey, this guy has got the ear of guys like Chris Paul, Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, Joel Embiid, guys that he's worked with in the past. When guys like that trust this guy, why shouldn't you look into what he is doing and maybe consider playing for him? That is the major pitch that BYU has right now. I have heard very, very good things about Brandon Dunson, the new assistant BYU announced. He has got recruiting connections all over the place. He's worked mainly out here in the Western United States. You look at his coaching career. He's a native of Illinois, but most of his coaching stops in the college game have been out here in the West. So he's got connections to AAU circuit. He's got connections to junior college. He's also working the high school ranks. And I think that the fact that he's got opportunities to work at different universities at different levels, by the way, he's worked at Denver in terms of the mid-major level. He's worked at Stanford, which it was then a Power 6 and will remain a Power 6, but it's part of the Pac-12. So he's got essentially the connections that if Kevin Young doesn't have a connection in the basketball world to a kid, I think Brandon Dunson probably knows somebody who at very minimum knows somebody who knows that person. So I really like the way that BYU basketball is going about building these relationships. Are they going to yield the major fruit that some people believe they could? TBD, because obviously there are a ton of other programs out there with some very deep pockets in the NIL sphere and very influential coaches in their own right who are going to be trying to sell all these young men on what they have to offer. I think that BYU is absolutely nailed this hire with Kevin Young. Just the early returns on him are absolutely mind-boggling. I have yet to hear one single criticism of him as a head coach. And honestly, it doesn't usually take me very long to find somebody who has something at least questionable about what this whoever this new coach might be. The nice part about Kevin Young is he's essentially a blank slate. He has not coached at the college level for quite some time, but he has built an incredible reputation when it comes to his player development status, what he has done in terms of running offenses at the NBA level, and how does that all translate to the basketball court this fall for BYU? Well, that is the major question that remains to be answered, but people I have talked to who have got far more, I guess I'd say, keen minds when it comes to basketball, they are saying that, Jake, don't worry about that part of it. This is a guy who is going to understand what the job is, and he's going to get it done. So that should excite you as a Cougar fan. And speaking of the basketball sphere, flipping over to the football sphere for a moment, BYU is very quietly working the transfer portal market. They're looking at offensive linemen. There have been some reports out there of them offering some linemen. And yes, there are offers going out, but TJ Woods prefers to not necessarily make a big show of this, at least to my knowledge, when it comes to recruiting the linemen he's going after. He's being very meticulous in who he's looking at. Aaron Roderick says they have held as many as 1 to 2 spots for that offensive line group. And I would imagine if BYU finds 2 guys that they think are capable of coming in and competing for playing time, and that's the biggest thing about this. You're not taking offensive linemen right now that are depth pieces. You want guys that can come in and potentially start day one for BYU this fall. There's none of this, hey, we take a guy and see if he develops over a year or 2. That's not the status BYU's in right now. They've got to hit the portal, go out and find guys that they think can come in. And one position that is absolutely going to need to be, I think, a position group that BYU looks at is offensive guard. I think you've got 4 pretty decent starting options for BYU, but one of the guard spots is still very much a weak point, at least on paper right now for BYU. Could one of the guys who's a return missionary / one of the guys who's been in the program for some time now step up like a Sonny Mocassini or a Peter Falanico? Yes, that possibility exists, but you want to bring in guys, the whole adage, iron sharpens iron. That's what BYU is looking for when it comes to this offensive line group. I still think offensive tackle is a position BYU needs to look at. I think that you need to bring in at least one guy who can push either Caleb Etienne and or Braden Keim along with the other offensive tackles on the roster for playing time. You want to see competition there, and I don't want guys to feel like that this is my spot. Now, I say that without saying that Connor Pay, I don't see anybody challenging Connor Pay for supremacy in his spot, but I look at this as an opportunity for BYU to really do some really good things in the transfer portal. And I just realized my rundown for today is actually out of date. So let's change that real quick while we're on there. But regardless, the point remains is that BYU is looking high and low for all options when it comes to finding the right guy or guys for that offensive line. I still believe that cornerback on defense is a position group that BYU needs to find a guy at as well. Those are the 2 that I'm very much kind of tracking and monitoring to see who ultimately announces offers / what BYU is going to look for. But I think priority number 1 right now for BYU in the offensive line is to find a guard or an interior lineman as well as 1 offensive tackle. If they can find 2 options that they like in both of those spheres, great. Bring them in and let them compete for playing time. They're obviously going to be behind the 8 ball a little bit in terms of having to catch up with the playbook and obviously understanding what the demands of them are going to be from a guy like TJ Woods. But if you get a good enough player, that shouldn't be an impediment to them competing for playing time. And that's the positive if you're a Cougar fan. So that's what I'm hearing. Anything else I learn, I'm going to be headed out of town this weekend. I'll have a recorded edition of the podcast tomorrow. We'll get back to it next week, but anything that happens between now and then, I will have the option of doing some remote updates via my phone. So anything I hear / learn, I'll be happy to pass along to you guys. And obviously I'll be getting back to passing those along to our Locked On Cougars Insider group as well. All right, coming up here in just a minute, we'll finish out this edition of the podcast. Had a great chat with Jakob Robinson at the end of BYU spring camp. I've been kind of holding it in reserve for a time that I felt like it was time to catch up with him. Well, no time like the present. So we'll catch up with Jakob Robinson, let you hear from him what he's expecting to do in his final season as a Cougar. We'll get to all that next right here on Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Of course, it's playoff time in the NBA and the NHL, and they've been really, really fun so far. Got to say, with the NHL coming to Utah, I am more in on the Stanley Cup playoffs than I ever have been before. I don't think I'm alone in saying that. A lot of you have said, pointed out that the Stanley Cup playoffs might be the best postseason in all of sports, and I've been thoroughly entertained so far. The other thing is that baseball is in full swing, and FanDuel, no matter what you're into, they are your place to bet on every single game right now. The best part is right now, new customers, you get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose into your account. Think about that. You have nothing literally to lose from our friends at FanDuel. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks and everything in between, all in an app that is safe, secure, and super easy to use. And the best part is, what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. That's $150 guaranteed win or lose into your account from our friends at FanDuel. They are America's #1 sportsbook. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Appreciate all of you for being everydayers with us here on the podcast. If you've not done so already, please join the Locked On Cougars Insider group. It's a great way to get updates from me as I am out on the road this weekend. They'll be the first people to hear anything that I learn. I'll be passing along to them. So if you guys want to do that, click the link in the show notes below and join us on Locked On Cougars, our insider group. All right, let's finish out today's show. Had a great chat with Jakob Robinson at the tail end of BYU spring ball. This is a guy that I think is going to have a very critical role for BYU this year. He has been sitting and learning from guys like Camden Garrett, as well as Eddie Heckard this past year in Jay Hill's defense. Well, those two guys are gone. Obviously, Mark Collins comes in from Weber State, and he has institutional knowledge of this defense. But Jakob Robinson, he's a big play waiting to happen seemingly every time he's on the field for this BYU defense. What does he hope to accomplish in his final foray as a Cougar this fall? Well, without further ado, here you go. Jakob Robinson talking about that with myself and Kevin Reynolds from the Salt Lake Tribune.
15 practices in, and you're a vet at this point. You've been through this multiple times. How are things different now versus maybe previous spring camps?
I think everyone's definitely more understanding of the defense, and the offense is looking good. I know that we have new transfers, we have new people always coming in and out, but everyone's looking like our chemistry is just a lot better too. So.
Now, guys like Camden and Eddie have exited the program, and I think you benefited from having them in the program year one in Jay Hill's defense. Now that you're kind of like one of the vets, as it were, in this defense, how much more comfortable do you feel?
Yeah, I think I understand what Coach Hill wants from us. When he calls a play, I know what to jump, what not to jump. So yeah, it's just being a lot more comfortable, and my job is just to get everyone so they understand what to do, what not to do, and try to understand Coach Hill.
Now, the cornerback position, you've had a lot of guys who have been in and out of the lineup this spring just due to injuries and surgery and the type. How difficult has that been, as you kind of talk about getting guys on the same page?
Yeah, I think Coach G does a great job, honestly. We've had 2 receivers switch over to DB, and they're doing great. I mean, just a lot of film. They'll come in early in the morning with Coach Hill, watch film, just because everyone wants to get better. So, yeah.
What's it like working with Coach Hill?
Yeah. And he's a tough guy, but I mean, he's super close to everyone on the team, has a really good relationship with everyone, expects a lot out of us. He doesn't ever want us to be bad, so just expecting greatness out of everybody.
So he demands it, though, right? Like,
so you have to be great.
Is it like accountability? How does he go about that?
Just, holding us accountable, making sure that the captains hold everybody accountable, and just proving, like, why you want to work hard. Yes.
Now, you talked earlier about like knowing when you can jump plays and whatnot, and he's talked about it. He said that guys like Tyler Batty, he mentioned you, Jakob Robinson, they know this defense. They know when they can gamble, I guess is the best way to do it. Is that something that you kind of grow into, or is that something that he points out to you, like, hey, you can take a shot here, there, whatever?
Yeah, he's pointed it out a lot to me. I mean, if I see a slant split, he's like, Jakob, you can jump it, just make sure your eyes are good when you jump it. So if they run a double move, he's just running into me, so I have nothing to worry about. So.
Okay. And I think there's probably other circumstances. He's probably been like, hey, that's the time to take that.
Yeah, exactly.
How much does it help you with him having been a defensive back in his playing days?
Yeah. I've honestly never had a DC who was a DB guy. So it's honestly been really nice. He understands what he wants, and we try to make it happen. Just tries to put us in the best position. So.
I want to ask you about like some guys like Maury Bamba, and like he's been around the program a little bit. Where do you think he's progressed the most in your mind?
Yeah, Maury definitely, he's gained a lot of weight. He's like 195 right now. It's like 180 last. Super fast, freak athletic. Yeah, he's starting to understand the defense more and more every day. Yeah, with help with Coach G and Coach Hill. So I think just his understanding of the game and how to play things is definitely gotten better.
I remember talking to you last spring about gaining weight, and you said, I can't gain weight. You said, I think that's the terminology you use. Have you been able to pack on some poundage?
Yeah, our strength staff has done amazing, honestly.
Okay.
So we have breakfast club, so I'll come up in the morning, eat a burrito, go to class. So definitely trying to still get my weight up, but it's slowly working.
Slowly but surely, right?
Slowly.
I guess the last thing for me is, what excites you the most as you head into the summer months here, getting ready for training camp?
Yeah, I'm really excited for off season. Just get with my DB trainer, Rob Daniel, again. Get some work in with him and just try to gain this weight finally. Just have a little break from football. But yeah, off season's always fun for me. So.
And I guess the last thing, are you playing both outside and slot? Have they been kind of moving both?
Yeah.
Is that by design? Like what caused that?
Yeah, just nickel. So when we go nickel, I'll move from corner down to the inside.
Okay. And
then they'll bring another corner in. So just for mainly passing downs, or they want me to guard Kibo because he's just a big receiver now. He's a tight end, I guess, but I just say he's a big receiver. So
you're covering Kibo?
Yeah.
How has that gone? Like,
I love it. I mean, he's a great competitor. Great routes. He's a lot more physical now. He's like 235, 240. So. Yeah.
So you move into nickel. You're essentially playing the Eddie Heckard role. It sounds like then to me. Is that kind of essentially what you're doing?
Yeah.
Where he would play outside, and if you went to nickel, he'd slot inside.
Yeah. Exactly.
Do you feel like that is going to be beneficial for you NFL-wise?
I think it will. Yeah. Just show my versatility, so that I can drop underneath. I can drop into safety. I can play his corner too. So.
Awesome. Well, Jacob, thanks for the time.
Thank you.
There you go, Jakob Robinson, BYU cornerback. A big thank you to him for taking the time to sit down with me and obviously Kevin Reynolds once again from the Salt Lake Tribune. You can tell that he is motivated to really go out and make his final season at BYU a good one. And I'm looking forward to seeing what Jakob offers to BYU. And the other thing about this is you look forward to what he has accomplished so far in his career. Remember, some of the big plays he's had this past season in particular. This is a guy that's just very much, he is a guy that I think is very excited to go out and put together what I hope, and I'm sure hopes, is his finest season to date in a BYU uniform, and then obviously see what happens when it comes to the NFL draft and his own prospects there. But it's a very exciting time for him, obviously, as he leads this position group. And as I said, I think the transfer portal, be good to see BYU bring in at least one cornerback, in my mind, just for depth's sake at minimum, to add some depth to a position group that was very much injured unit throughout most of spring. Remember, a lot of guys out due to injury / off-season surgeries. So a lot of guys that saw time in spring ball aren't necessarily guys you're counting on being ready to go this fall. So having a guy that comes in from the junior college and or just another college football program at the FBS level as a transfer, I think would be very beneficial, just to having extra bodies there to benefit if a guy or two goes down injured this season as well. So big thank you once again to Jakob Robinson for taking the time. And obviously we'll have more conversations like this in coming editions of Locked On Cougars. All right, that's going to do it for this edition of the show. A big thank you to all of you for your support of the podcast. Thank you for making it your first listen of the day. And obviously the big thank you to all of you who are everydayers as well. I'll be back tomorrow with another edition of the podcast, catching up with both Jack Kelly as well as Caleb Etienne, and also looking forward to the weekend in the NFL draft. We'll get to all of that on tomorrow's edition of Locked On Cougars.